Hi, Steve Sosnick here with today's Interactive Brokers Midday Market Update for Tuesday, January 12th, 2021. We're off to sort of a middling start today, which I guess isn't all that surprising because yesterday was kind of a meandering day for most of your major indices. So in that sense, it's, I guess, to be expected. What I take away as the themes of the last few trading days are stuff that we've been addressing for some time, but stuff that we really addressed in earnest on Friday, which was really the tremendous amount of value, just of sheer wealth that had been created essentially out of thin air in both Bitcoin and Tesla in just a space of a couple of months. What we started to realize was, as their market caps combined to approach about $1.5 trillion, and considering that both had doubled in a relatively short period of time, actually even more so, we're talking about between 750 billion and $1 trillion of newfound wealth that just sort of came out of thin air. And at this point, I think when you're talking about Bitcoin, we can go back and forth on what its fundamental value is. Bottom line is it's supply and demand, like every other commodity. I'm going to call it a commodity because I guess that's really the best analogy to what it is. People, compare it to some sort of metal where people mine it. There's a relatively finite supply, but it sort of increases and decreases as use occurs, and that's more or less the best analogy that I can come up with Bitcoin in terms of how that goes, and that's pure supply and demand. And in the case of Tesla, which has long since surpassed any conventional stock valuation metrics, it's basically pure momentum. I consider it the best indicator of pure momentum and pure speculation that there is out there. So be it. And so this money had been created in a very, very short period of time on instruments that had parabolic rises. And when you go up on a spike like that, you usually come down on a spike like that. And I mentioned it on Friday. I did say that I wish I'd said it was coming on over the weekend, but that I wasn't prescient enough. But I did say that these things sneak up on you for no reason, unpredictably, because when you think about it, what was the cause for the retracement from like 42,000 to about 31,000 in Bitcoin? Call it about a 30% retracement. There wasn't any. It had just run out of steam. And the interesting case there was it ran out of steam over the weekend. When things were thin and basically it's different. Bitcoin is different than pretty much anything else that you can trade in the sense that it's tradable 24/7. Now, liquidity probably is not what it ought to be during those off hours. There's a reason markets close. And while you can have algorithms running 24/7, you still kind of need people to make the risk decisions, and you can expect that they would be a bit thinner. We can go into the nature of algorithmic trading, which we've done before, but basically when liquidity is light, markets tend to spread out. They get, bid-ask spreads get wider. There's less posted size, and it doesn't take much. But that 24/7 nature got me thinking about some of the parallels that I see in Bitcoin. And while I put a lot of the parallels in recent sort of speculative stock and option market trading to gambling, particularly sports gambling in the case of the option market, Bitcoin actually struck me as a bit different. It really occurred to me that it was like a video game. And, you were continually shooting for that next high score. Hey, we got it up to 30,000. Hey, we got it up to 40,000. Except that there's real money involved. But in the sense that you could, pretty much play it whenever you want to play it. And, when you're relatively unconstrained, that has a video gaming aspect to it. And it also occurred to me that the best parallel that I could think of was, the digital gold mining that went on. It started in the late 90s, kind of picked up in the early 2000s and moved along pretty much steadily and throughout that decade or so. And I remember reading all the stories about the Chinese gold mining farms and how companies were hiring teams of people to play games and create digital currency that could then be exchanged for real world value. This isn't really all that different. There is a digital currency that is being mined, in this case, instead of by teams of low-paid workers playing video games. This is more automatic. It's computerized. It's more specifically computerized. It's computers doing the mining. But really, it's that same sort of scenario. You're creating a currency in a digital environment and converting it into a real world value. That's more or less the same kind of element to me. And when you think about how Bitcoin is much better, has been adopted much more readily much more readily by younger investors, many of whom are new to investing, but they're not new to gaming. And I think that aspect really has a role in how Bitcoin has traded. Now, as far as today goes, we're seeing Bitcoin meandering. We're seeing the stock markets meandering. I think there's a lot of digestion that has to go on. Remember also, you've got a monthly expiration at the end of the week. We have a long weekend in the U.S. We have Martin Luther King Day on Monday. We begin earnings season pretty much in earnest on Friday with J.P. Morgan and some of the other large banks coming out. And earnings season begins to accelerate into next week, where you also have the inauguration, and hopefully it's just a nice, quiet inauguration. But I think markets are pricing in a bit of volatility, as you can see the relatively elevated levels and implied volatilities in the VIX coming into that event. We've been talking about that for some time. People were worried about electoral and inaugural chaos, and we got some last week, and we'll see if that continues. Hopefully not. And this is talking as a citizen, not as a trader. And so there's a lot to focus on, but right now the market, I think, is digesting, heading into what could potentially be a fairly eventful season, both on the earnings front and the political front. And so it's sometimes markets need to just digest, and we'll see if that continues for the rest of the day. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.